Welcome to the first module of this e-learning proposal entitled LDT versus IVD Product Development. The regulatory jurisdiction of LDTs is once again in the news, and this module is designed to provide an overview comparing and contrasting the development of two different yet related products. The primary objective of this module is to compare and contrast activities undertaken by developers of LDTs and IVDs. For the purposes of this presentation, IVD development will focus only on Class II FDA-cleared products. So let's start this presentation out at the 50,000-foot level. All clinical laboratories must select an assay menu that meets the needs of their customers. That is, the physicians and patients who rely on their data. Now, while the majority of assays are provided by device manufacturers whose IVDs have gone through review by the FDA, CLIA enables the laboratory to develop their own tests. Laboratory-developed tests can only be provided in a highly complex laboratory, can be advantageous when clinical need cannot wait for regulatory review, can be leveraged by some for early access into the clinical market, and by and large have a lower regulatory burden than for an analogous IVD. This slide provides a brief timeline of this ongoing debate. Back in 2007, the point of focus were IVD-MIAs, a particular subset of LDTs. While IVD-MIAs may not be the current point of focus, the FDA remains persistent in its belief that it does have jurisdiction over LDTs. Let's briefly review some definitions, as one of the key points of this ongoing debate is whether or not an LDT is a medical device. It doesn't matter what definition you look at. It could be the definition of medical device, of IVD, or of a laboratory-developed test. All have a lot of words. While many can debate the differences between the three definitions, they have a commonality in their intended use. To put it simply, the results are used for patient care. Let's delve a little bit deeper into why LDTs are receiving so much attention from the FDA. So what's this debate all about? Well, from the FDA's perspective, they have authority over all medical devices. They view LDTs as a medical device. Therefore, if a laboratory develops an LDT, they take on the role of device manufacturer. With CLIA in place, the FDA has historically applied what's called enforcement discretion. However, with the expansion of molecular testing and advances in technology, the risk associated with this enforcement discretion is now perceived to be high enough to merit further investigation and discussion. Let's now take a few minutes to look at the different process definitions used by the LDT and IVD developer. An LDT developer has a lot to think about. Once the clinical need has been identified, questions need to be answered. For example, where are samples going to be acquired from? And will they be across the clinical spectrum to ensure a robust validation? How many interfaces might be needed to ensure that results can be delivered quickly? What's the reimbursement strategy? What QC is being used? This list is by no means inclusive, but illustrates some of the challenges an LDT developer will need to undertake as they balance trying to get innovative testing into the hands of the physicians with the logistical, regulatory, and financial challenges that can be associated with LDT development. An IVD developer will also have a lot to think about. While some of the questions they will ask will overlap with the LDT developer, for example, what's my reimbursement strategy? They also need to ask a number of other questions. First and foremost is, what is the intended use of my product? The answer to this question will factor into the classification of the device, the regulatory pathway, and their marketing strategy. Another question to ask early in the development process is, where will the product be marketed? If outside of the U.S., additional regulations may come into play. Last but not least, related to these regulations are, what are my post-market responsibilities? The answers to all of these questions will factor into the balancing of getting the product to market with the overhead and burden of maintaining appropriate quality and regulatory compliance processes throughout the lifespan of the IVD. So let's delve a little bit deeper into the similarities and differences between LDTs and IVDs. The list you see here are the analytical studies per CLIA that must be conducted prior to launching an LDT. The data generated are only a component of the entire process for launching an LDT, but they are the data that should be used as a reference for any future investigation, updates, and/or responses to inspectional inquiries. As with the LDT developer, this list shown here for IVD developer responsibilities is only a subset of the entire process of getting their product to market. The components of the pre-market notification, or 510K, are shown here, and all elements tie back to the intended use of the product. As a result, the planning of studies, the generation of data, and the required statistical power will be quite different from an LDT developed in a specific clinical laboratory. So to summarize, the development of any test used in a clinical laboratory is a complex process designed to ensure high-quality patient care. The LDT is managed by the laboratory director and is a unique entity in a highly complex clinical laboratory. The IVD has a different regulatory path with additional burden, and the exact regulatory jurisdiction for LDTs is currently under review and discussion. This concludes the first of 4 modules from this e-learning proposal. Please take the associated assessment and continue on with the review of the remaining 3 modules. Thank you for your time.